Good evening, everybody. I'm Catherine Loftus. Welcome back to Note My Objection. It was trial day 1 in the Commonwealth versus Brian Walsh. And let me tell you right now, I was about as shocked could be by some of the things that were said today in court. And I have to tell you, part of me just wants to skip right past the Commonwealth's opening statements and go to the defenses, because I am truly shooketh at what Brian Walsh's defense is. But first, let's go back and to the very beginning. When Judge Fournier brought the jury pool in, they have 16 jurors. They picked those jurors over 3 days prior to Thanksgiving. And she asked them a number of questions. And I thought it was interesting that, we should kind of go over this, because what it shows is that there's different ways judges do the same thing. So for many people who watch the retrial, we saw Judge Cannoni ask the questions of the jurors, did you have any, did you talk to anybody about this? Did you go on social media? That kind of stuff. I will say that I felt like Judge Fournier really had a handle on, she's somebody clearly who to me comes across as, she's very competent. She's very highly and well respected within the legal community and on the Superior Court bench. She clearly knows what she's doing. She's tried a bunch of cases, both as a lawyer and as a judge, and she clearly has control of the courtroom. I thought it was funny, sort of juxtaposed with the Reed case, and I saw a lot of people commenting on oh, this is how you run, a quorum, this and that. And I do think, I will say in defense of Judge Cannoni, and most people know at this point I'm not a Judge Cannoni hater. I think she was handed a very unfortunate set of circumstances. You can't really compare apples and oranges, because if Judge Fournier sat on Karen Reed's case, everybody would have hated her too. That's just the reality is that, everybody played a role in the circus. It was a show, and everybody took teams, and everybody, had people they loved and people they hated. But I do think this is almost an example of what a real trial looks like, okay? Because a lot of these trials that we see on TV, it's in many ways, there's so much outside influence that it doesn't really present, when people watch it on court TV, a law or crime, or wherever you're watching it and streaming these cases, it doesn't. I think a lot of these big showy cases are not reflective of the criminal justice system as a whole, or how trials are actually done. And I thought today was a good example of, it's quiet in there. All of the attorneys are respectful. Everybody sort of understands this process, what their roles are. The prosecutor's job is to hopefully get justice for Anna Walsh. And by doing that, they mean that they want to convict Brian Walsh. And the defense's job is to try to hold the Commonwealth to their burden. So the questions she asked were the following. She asked 4 questions, and basically what she told the jury is I'm going to ask questions, I want you to answer, and then I want you to nod your head and to connect with you. So she basically scanned from left to right, down from the top row, and then down to the bottom row, left to right, to make sure that everyone knows oh shit, I have to make eye contact with the judge and affirm that I'm actually swearing under oath that I can comply with all these things. And the questions were this: were you able to comply with orders not to speak it with anybody about the case? Were you able to comply with the order to not do research on the case? Were you able to comply with the order not to go on any social media or get any news media? And then finally, do you still have an open mind? And then she went through, what we call the pre-charge is the instruction sort of on the front end to the jury, explaining what the process is, what the burden of proof is, that it's all on the Commonwealth, that the defendant is presumed innocent. And so we sort of went through this normal standard course. They they talked about a couple of motions in limine that had been filed prior to the start of impanelment, but didn't go into the substance of those. Now, then we got to the opening statements, and 88 Connor for the Commonwealth. I thought he did a very good job. I thought it was clear and concise. Obviously, most of the people on the outside who are watching this already know what the allegations are, but we don't know the specifics. And I thought it was really, I thought he did a good job at sort of juxtaposing Anna's life with Brian's life and what was going on at the time that he was, had this federal conviction. He was facing prison time, that Anna was having an affair. She was back and forth between D.C. and Boston. When he talked about it, I thought it was really powerful when he talked about evidence and the evidence that the jury was going to see, and that some of it's tangible. And he named specifically, he said, you'll see photos of the family home and the house. And then he said, you'll see photos of a Tyvek suit and a hatchet and a hacksaw. And, you sort of like really right off on the front end. So the Commonwealth is saying, like, do not be fooled by this guy and whatever he says or he presents, because the reality is he chopped up his wife, okay, and disposed of her. Like, that's what the reality of this situation is, okay? So, like, he might look all nice and well. And I think that's, like, it's good to use examples like that because they're powerful. This idea of, like, images that's planting a seed in the jury's head, like, oh shit, we're gonna see images of a hacksaw and a Tyvek suit and all this kind of stuff. And then he goes through the Google searches that come from the different phones, and they were, ooh boy, they are not good. Starting at 4:54 a.m., best way to dispose of a body. How long for someone to be missing to inherit? Can you throw away body parts? Is it possible to clean DNA off a knife? I am the user of my wife's credit cards. She's missing. Best way to dispose of body parts after a murder. Better to wash or dispose of crime scene clothes. There was one that you talked about, how long does Lowe's security camera footage store? Can you identify a body with broken teeth? So we're talking about, that's putting, not only is the Commonwealth doing that, the DA doing that, for the purpose of actually showing what he did, but like the gravity of this man is Googling. You're right. The inference is he's Googling, like, if I take my wife's teeth out of her mouth, are they going to be able to identify her? Like, that's what the inference is, okay? So, like, for as much as we're talking about, this is happening, this is happening, this is, like, gruesome allegations, okay? This is not, like, just generic old, like, domestic violence, like, something happens, and that's not to minimize any of that, but this is, like, gruesome stuff, okay? Hacksawing, hatcheting up the mother of your children, like, that's what the allegations are. So I thought that the Commonwealth did a really good job at just sort of presenting the overall idea of what their case was, because like I said, we know sort of the generalities of it, but didn't know the specifics. So what they talked about as well, I thought sort of the timeline was interesting. So she misses, what the Commonwealth says is basically she misses Thanksgiving because she's with the guy she's seeing. She's in Dublin with him, and then she goes to see her mother in Serbia. She then misses Christmas Eve. She misses her flight back Christmas morning. And all of this, she's allegedly telling Walsh, that, these are work emergencies and this and that. And then, obviously, so she's back. Then she goes back to D.C. after Christmas and then comes back for New Year's Eve. Now, on New Year's Eve, they have a friend over, and Brian Walsh makes dinner. They have champagne, kind of hang out. The witness apparently will say that, everything seemed to be in good order for the most part. Brian Walsh tells them, like, oh, I misplaced my phone, so I can't get it. And these are the little clues that the Commonwealth is dropping. These little, like, the boop, 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 breadcrumbs in the woods, for Goldilocks to follow, or Little Red Riding Hood to the Big Bad Wolf. To grandmother's house we go. Because basically what the Commonwealth is saying, like, we want to prove to you, we want you, the jury, to understand that not only did he kill her that night, but that he intended to do it. Like, things about, like, intentionally inviting somebody over so that he could have sort of this idea of it, maybe this is an alibi so someone could testify that, no, things were good with them. And, oh, he said he lost his phone. So if there's anything, if they're looking for his phone for him, they're not going to find it. And later we see that in what the Commonwealth alleges is that he uses his kids, technology to not only Google, but to bring with him. And that's how they find where he is at all these various locations, which they then catch him on camera. And then they recover in the dumpsters near his mother's house, the Tyvek suit, the hatchet, the Hermes watch, basically what she was wearing, a rug that matches their house. So there's a lot going on top of the fact that he doesn't ever report her missing. Okay, so January 1st allegedly is the last time he sees her. That's later what his story is. So she works in D.C., and at the end of coming back from, like, the New Year's vacation, her boss gets in and basically somebody's like, oh, Anna Walsh's husband's looking for her, says, like, he can't find her. She left on the 1st, this and that. She talks to Walsh. She basically says, oh, the last time I saw her, she said she had a work emergency. She left at 5 o'clock in the morning on January 1st. I haven't talked to her. They go to her townhouse in D.C. She's not there. The HR woman calls her head of security, who I think he's the first guy. I mean, and you have to know, I mean, law enforcement, he pegs Walsh right off the bat from the way that at least the Commonwealth presented it. So he's head of security, former Secret Service, gets on the call with the boss of HR, the head of HR, and Walsh is like, oh yeah, I haven't talked to her. Well, sometimes she does this, sometimes she does that. Maybe she went to see her mother. And the guy's like, have you called the police? Like, your local police, have you told your local police that you haven't seen your wife or heard from her in 3 days? Like, she hasn't responded, you haven't talked to her or anything like that? And he's like, oh, no, blah, blah, blah. And so the guy hangs up, the head of security, and he calls the Cohasset police and is like, lady's missing, and the dude, this is all what's going on. So I think they sort of, he clocked him right from the start. He also calls Metro DC police to search on his apartment or townhouse, and they don't find anything. So think about it. Like, she's alleged to have gone missing on January 1st. He doesn't ever report it. The person who reports it is calling from Washington, D.C., and he's the head of the security for her office. And so, basically through the opening statement as well as the testimony, the Commonwealth has presented today this picture of Brian Walsh as this like nonchalant, like dad, husband, very open when the police do go to talk to him. We heard from one of the sergeants today, was one of the lead investigators of the Cohasset police. He talks about, in a lot of that's most of the testimony we heard today was recorded interviews. And, really smart people think they can get away with murder, and that's often why they talk. Like, oftentimes guilty people do talk. Like, people think that there's this correlation between, like, you wouldn't talk if you were guilty. That's not necessarily true. Sometimes people are so narcissistic that they think they can get away with it. And you have to think about the fact that Brian Walsh is arguably was somebody who was fooling sophisticated people, like, in the art world. So he's obviously got a way about him. And if you listen to the interviews during the testimony today, I mean, he's pretty good. He's not really off at all. Like, he's got an answer for everything. There's not a ton of hesitation. He seems very relaxed. He seems very confident. One thing, he does not seem as worried at all that his wife and the mother of his children is nowhere to be found. He's like, oh, well, sometimes sometimes that, I don't know. Like, it's tough. Like, even just listening to it, even if it doesn't show, anything specific, it's like, okay. And I'm the first one to say, people react very, very differently to trauma. So I don't generally like to sort of judge based on people's reactions. However, this is odd. Pretty odd. You got little kids at home. You can hear the kids in the background. She's just gone, and you're like, chuckling, laughing, like in the interview, literally like nothing's wrong. So I thought the Commonwealth had a strong day. They had a really strong opening statement. They also had the facts on their side. Let's not get this twisted, okay? So the facts are certainly in favor of the Commonwealth, which always makes your case a little bit easier to present across. The facts are not on the side of the defense. And I will tell you, when Brian Walsh pled guilty prior to impanelment to 2 of the charges, I was like, okay, for sure. I'm just going to go all out and put it on the record. My opinion is Walsh is going to testify. He's going to say it was some sort of accident. He's going to do similar to what happened in the Ingolf Turk case, that the defendant took the stand himself. It's very, very unusual. But when the only alternative to a strong set of facts is like, I have to tell you my version of the story, like sometimes you have to testify as a defendant. It's like a self-defense case. Like, well, who else is going to present the story, right? So when he pled, I'm like, damn, they're going to put him on the stand, and he's going to say, okay, we were fighting, we were drinking, we were in an accident, we were kind of wrestling, I don't know, we this and that, and she fell down the stairs and broke her neck because she did this, she did that, and I freaked, okay? And I'm not saying that's, like, believable, but it's not unbelievable, right? It's not disbelievable. It's not something that couldn't happen. You could be like, oh my God, I'm on federal probation. Oh my God, what do I do? She fell down the stairs, her neck's broken, she's dead. Do I call the police? And I get, sometimes people make crazy decisions in the moment, and in no way does that justify his actions, even if that were to happen. However, that's not what the defense got up and said today. Now, first of all, Larry Tipton got up there, and both Larry Tipton and Kelly Porteous are very super experienced, well-respected attorneys in Massachusetts doing criminal work. They, they're on the murder list. They do really serious cases, that kind of stuff. I have to tell you, I don't know. I am very confused. I'm very confused about what the defense case actually is, and that there is like any iota in anybody on that defense team that thinks that's going to be believable. So Attorney Tipton got up, and I was like, okay, I'm hearing it. I mean, he's talking about, like, you're going to hear that Brian Walsh, like, they had a nice night, and then he went down, and, you know, he was cleaning the dishes at 1:30, and then he went back upstairs, and he found her, and she was dead in the bed, and he nudges her, and then she falls off, and that's it. Then he chops her body up? Okay, wait a second. Can we rewind? How is that? I mean, literally I was like, oh, is that really what the defense is? Please don't tell me that's what the defense is. Please don't tell me that's what the defense is. And the only thing I can think of is like that Brian Walsh is so narcissistic. He's like, no, this is what happened, and this is the defense you're going to present. And he's just like delusional and lying through his teeth and making his attorneys present the defense he wants, because ultimately the defendant is the one who leads. The attorneys present the case, but ultimately it's the defendant's call, right? And so maybe he's just like full blown going on that. I think there is not a snowball chance in hell that the jury's going to believe that. I'm sorry. And like right off the bat. So for me, I'm like, why would they, like, now they're stuck to it in the opening that like she was just dead in the bed, and he didn't call 911, the mother of his 2 kids, that now we're saying, oh, he loved her, he wasn't going to divorce her, he wasn't going to leave her, but he chopped her up and dumped her in a dumpster instead, and then lied to the police and made up this whole huge story. It's not believable. I'm sorry, it's not believable. It would have been believable if he was like, you're going to hear from Brian Walsh, and he's going to tell you it was an accident, and then he freaked. I actually would kind of buy that, because as much as the Commonwealth is trying to prove that, like, basically he planned this and intentionally did it, I don't know. I really don't know. I really don't know that I buy that. I feel like this feels more like a rage thing to me, because if he was really planning on doing it, wouldn't he have bought the hatchet before? Wouldn't he have bought all the stuff before? Why would he be Googling it 5 o'clock in the morning, how do I dispose of a body? You know, when does it start to smell? He would have already known all the answers to that question. You know what I mean? Because that's what I'm getting, is that the Commonwealth like believes that he knew all this. She was cheating, all this stuff, and that basically like he planned it. But maybe I'm wrong in that they didn't explicitly say that. That's what I'm inferring from it. So if that's an incorrect inference, then whatever. But all in all, I would say, I mean, if we're talking about points, major points, 1-0 for the Commonwealth, for sure. They did great in their opening statement. I mean, Larry Tipton, the other probably the most important thing is like, as a defense attorney, sometimes you only have what you have to work with, right? Like, all he has to work with is like that his client is a convicted liar. And so think about that. Like, he's a fraud. So it's not like he's convicted of like, you know, like a trespass or something. He's convicted of fraud in federal court. Like, that's a serious conviction. And so this guy's a professional liar. And then when you get up as a defense attorney and you're like, you're right, he lied on January 4th and January 5th and the 6th and the 7th to the police. And he lied about this and he lied about that. But he's telling the truth when he says he just found her in bed and she was dead, and he decided, you know, why would he do that? Like, okay, if he actually wanted to get rid of her, right? If he was like, oh, the best thing I can do to get myself out of federal prison is if like she's out the picture, because then I'll be the only parent able to take care of the kids, and the judge will like see that as mitigation. Then if you found her in the bed, you'd like call 911 and be like, oh, she's dead in the bed. They do an autopsy. They'd say, oh, it was a stroke, this and that. You get your insurance money. You'd get out of jail. Makes no sense at all. Makes zero sense. Makes, like, literally that theory makes zero sense in my mind. I don't understand. And literally when I heard it, I'm like, oh, no. It's like basically slamming the door. I don't know. I will stay open-minded, but I have to tell you that was a shock for me. So tomorrow is jury trial day number 2. We will have, I think it's still going to be the sergeant on the stand. They did recognize the judge. If anybody saw at the very beginning, you saw Yuri Buchanan and 3 other people. I don't know who specifically they were. They were recognized by the court. What that means is they were summoned, excuse me, to appear and testify, and that when the court recognizes you, she says you are subject to this subpoena the entirety of the trial, and once you're called to testify, like, you have to come testify, you are under court order. So, like, you know, they raise their hands, they swear to that. So I don't know when any of those individuals will be called, but all in all, I thought it was a really interesting day because we didn't know up until now, we didn't know specifically what the Commonwealth was going to argue the case was about, or what the defense was going to be. And now we know. So the question will be, is he going to testify? Because they talk specifically about, like, you'll hear that he found her, you'll hear that came down in the kitchen to wash dishes. Like, well, who's going to tell us that if it's not for him? So you're telling me this guy's going to get up on the stand and say, I found her in bed and then I freaked and chopped her up? I don't know. It's a tough sell. We'll see. Thanks for watching, guys.
If you like this episode, please comment, like, share, and subscribe. Every bit helps. Thanks for watching Note My Objection. See you next week.